which I want to now also what put in the 80. Now Paul said, it need a software. Now we're every
Okay. 80 Bible say, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And only the first statement, but usually in biblical hermeneutics, you know, when we say Bible na can say me know the colon whatever precedes the colon, no, an explanation of what have been said before. And, you know, the statement said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Me my essay if you say we need him there, no. The person sharing say, because you have rejected knowledge. If we say what put him there, it, you know, it's not as if you send him there in your but that is the true definition of ignorance. And you know, Otoasoka said, I will also reject you, that you shall be no priest to me, seeing that you have forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget your children. And you know, when you go for all right, but it's only say what post I go for emra na nimdie no. E masa for no ebe ignorance. And that ignorance, you know, and it destroy an individual. Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 17 and 18. Ephesians 4, 17 and 18.
Enti meka yi na media dance here radio mu say on 90 bi say that mama aka no enante won adwene ehu one ena won adwene edusu na isan say woni de na won akoma efriti wo ye nkwa onyakopon ema no ananafo 19 isan say won ani mu ade bi mu nti wo de won mama hohwi na oye efie nyina anibre.
Okay. Enti na Paul kasa afa enipa a wonya mbehu onyankopɔn no kre no. Na the description for that statement say being alienated from the life of God. Enti yɛwɔ nkwa bi a efiri onyankopɔn mu ɛba. Saa nkwa no sɛ wombɛte asɛmpa no na sɛ wommɛyɛ sutie ma asɛmpa no yɛmfa wo nka Yesu Kristo ahenni no ho a wonni saa nkwa no bi. Ɛna Paul bɛka sɛ adeɛ cause that alienation, no, from that life that proceeds from God, no, is ignorance. Sin is not the greatest problem of man. Usually a cast our statement, you know, but it is sin is a consequence of an action. It, you know, their only nimdie no. Their ignorance, no. Ena otimi bu adie bi so. And sometimes we think say, oh, say adie we na meaning. Internet can say ignorance is not an excuse before the law, right? And you know, emrano the mere fact that wood names as not some no doesn't mean that you won't be punished. And you know, Paul said, "Sa alienation, no, idea cause that alienation, no, is ignorance." And Ochiremu Eka say, having the understanding darkened, being alienated from the life of God through the ignorance that is in them because of the blindness of their hearts. You know, bottom line in they say omuni nkwaje because they are ignorant. And you know, onyankopon pese wo abeye o Kristo ni ewie a obesai awosa tibia no. God doesn't want us to be ignorant, so don't be ignorant. Acts chapter 17, verse 30.
Acts 17:30 o say ne saa nti onyankopon agu n'ani agu emre wodo a woni ni so na afei die o hye nipa e wo man nyina sɛ wɔn sakyɛ wɔn ade.
Okay. 80 when it comes to ignorance, you be do types. Now, the Nyankopon here a bit lenient towards their own. In as much as any excuse, God is more lenient or patient with that kind of ignorance than their willfully onimna or sign a yes adeɛ no. Enti no, ɛberɛ a na wɔnim no, Onyankopɔn bu n'ani gu so. Na saa ɛberɛ yi deɛ, Onyankopɔn hyɛ nnipa ɛwɔ mmea no nyinaa sɛ wɔn nsakyera wɔn adwene. Enti no, ignorance no, sɛdeɛ yɛreka no, it is not the absence of knowledge, but knowledge no wɔ hɔ. Sɛ na wɔnte saa adeɛ no ase nti no, that gap no is what we call ignorance. And the only way I'll be to kill ignorance is knowledge. You have to study, you need to ask, you need to research, you need to. That is the only way I'll be to take away ignorance. But yeah, explore some concepts when it comes to ignorance. The kind ignorance. Concepts about ignorance. Ignorance is the root of all problems. Inti, we have a problem in ignorance. So many years ago, and obi tina ase na say, onu nu hu ni say Iraq for ni develop nuclear weapons. For so many years later, Omega say enye no kre. But obi spitefulness and our yes, but you could never be for it. You could never be. So all problems roots ignorance. It is the absence of purpose. And they say, "Oh, but I be see when you so usually no. Obe say obre no adagye aye like an extensive search. Ewa adie bi ho. Even if say adie ni be pose problem and there are solutions be bre wi ase. Nyame ya wa adom na say utimi bi odo ho na say wo sika. Enoma be bre ho abetimi di sika dane na mana yi. So many things. And you know, there are owobotai bi no. Even when adie bi eposi a year, obenya ne brush share I share around what are the possibilities to just bridge that gap, no. Say if in case as I no a show up, obetimi enya the assessor or the yi no free side no. Ignorance is darkness. Every aspect of your life are we ignorant, no. Satan rules. Enti say eba wa bra boom areas bi a won shada ni nimdeɛ wɔ na usually you just operate out of wow personal volition bi, and at the end of the day any adeɛ bi a ebetimi abo ama wenya whatever you are looking for. So what the knowledge bape, it throws the light to that particular darkness na uwo no, and it exposes you to limitation and vulnerability. To say some years ago in Kofobi, more grass it's because they were ignorant. Obi oha, yes, you could be on fine chine or the angwa, what makes it money not all those things is because the people are ignorant. And we them that kind of thing they thriving. Once they become enlightened, Obi and so we are ignorant, expose you to a lot of dangers, and that is the reason why you can't afford to be ignorant. Now, the book of Proverbs, chapter 1, verse number 20, downwards. Solomon, Ekika, and Sembi. Proverbs 1:20.
Proverbs chapter 1, verse 20. Nyansa etie mmɔne so. Ɔma ɔte mene mmɔnten so. Ɔteam adwabere tie. Kurapono ano. Ɛna ɔka ne nsɛm sɛ. Na bɛn na montete kwa mobɛpɛ ɛntete kwa asɛm akɔsie. Na fɛdifoɔ nso ɛbɛpɛ wɔ n'afɛdie. Na nkwasiafoɔ akyiri nimdeɛ. Monnane mo ho ɛma me kasa kyerɛ. Hwɛ, mɛworɔ me honhom mama ho. Mɛma mo hunu me nsɛm. sɛ mafrɛ na sɛ mafrɛ na mokame na metene me nsɛm na obi amfa anyɛ hwee na motu mafutuo nyinaa dwene na mekasa kyerɛ no mompɛ nti me nso mɛsere mo mama mmienu mo ahopopoɔ bɛba mo meyi mo ho ahi mo ahopopoɔ ɛba sɛ apranaa na mo amanneɛ ɛba sɛ ahum
28.
verse 20 ɛno na mobɛfrɛ me na menne so mobɛhwehwɛ me nhema na mohu me
29.
ɛsiane sɛ wokyiri nimdeɛ na woampɛ awurade suro nti
Okay. Enti dia Solomon person ka nyinaa ne sɛ sɛdeɛ yɛka no wohia nimdeɛ na wode ayi ade a wonim, which is ignorance. Enti no deɛ ɔpɛ sɛ ɔka nyinaa ne sɛ wɔn sɛ yɛfa ne sɛ na obi sɔre na ɔka sɛ ɔngye the law of gravity ndi whether sɛ wogye di anaasɛ wongye ndi no it has no impact on the effect of gravity. Opa, yɛmfa nkoko nti last floor na yɛngya wo nsi fam. Whether you believe in gravity or not, it will work on you. Enti no deɛ Solomon pɛ sɛ ɔkyerɛ ne sɛ wobɛyɛ w'adwene sɛ wobɛpo saa nimdeɛ no anaasɛ wobɛpushi saa adeɛ no afiri hɔ no effect a ɛyɛ possible sɛ bi ɛbɛtumi de aba no woyɛ dɛn yɛ ɛbɛba but obi a ɔfa saa nimdeɛ no saa effect no ba a ɛhyɛ da yɛ impactful than wo na wobɛ ignore adeɛ no koraa enti nyansa sɛ ɛberɛ a wakɔ w'ahohiahia mu na wo ho kyerew na wohu deɛ woyɛ no me nso mɛgyina baabi na masere ɛfiri sɛ woapo onyankopɔn ɛkwan enti no ignorance ɛnyɛ enti na ɛma yɛ mu biara ɛnchusi sɛ wobɛyɛ ignorant and more importantly sɛ wobɛyɛ okristoni ɛfa onyankopɔn onyamesom ho ɛna ɛyɛ the most important thing for this lesson say once you become ignorant nkyerɛkyerɛ bia bɛtumi afa enti no make sure sɛ wobɛsɛ wo brɛ no wadagye apɛ nimdeɛ more sɛdeɛ ɛbɛyɛ a wobɛtumi ɛde abɔ wo ho ban ɛfiri atorɔ ne esum ne saa nneɛma no nyinaa ɛsɛ dɛ mede kan kan no biblically we have two types of ignorance. First one, your friend innocent ignorance, which is uninformed. Simply say want to taste answer and usually it happens. What's if you have a Bible class? Maybe I want to some topic but this lesson, what's the moon would say, you know, to say, I said, yeah, I did with party, not minimum. After the I said, yeah, mouth some enlightenment be. So you were just uninformed. This kind of ignorance, God is very patient with it when it comes to salvation. Nonetheless, it doesn't take away the effect a bit also. It is a sure Acts chapter 19. Ebra Paul shia sa enipakuo no bisa say na yebo mo esunu munya hom konkron na na. Enkofo no say yenim po say hom konkron bi obaabi. It wasn't as if say na omo ye rebellious to nokre no. They don't know, they were not informed. And you know, what's your response a buyer na they had that grace period so metis nokre no. Now, after hearing the truth, omo response to the truth and they determine their state. And we also say what yes no kreno what we won koma e ma yebo won suma wonya on adoma cheje. It's being uninformed, you can be pardoned kakra in some areas. But the most dangerous one, willful ignorance. That is hardened heart. And you be the kind in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 17. Paul said, and go for no mako kind of crazy not chess and go for nina. Demomuno. Esan say we prim one akuma na one nade one adwina ma na ye tu nintino. Wo pull sa onyankopon no kre no. And no, they are choosing to reject the knowledge. Say yempese yeti onyankopon no kre no. The same example with innocent ignorance, Acts chapter 17. What's a Paul do or no for no sumanya mi p. I don't go see altar be a yatre to the unknown God. 80 innocent ignorance, no, usually you can have a grace period. And the Paul do want to say, to this unknown God to whom I preach concern. You know, saa unknown God be na matrato na musimu nim ho hwe. And no na me pese me mam on ho nim die. And at the end of the day, when I will tie saa ensem no, ebe hunu saa onyame kro no, na wosom saa onyame no. You know, we need to take all those things into consideration. Na ama we hu dia esese we. But bottom line is being ignorant very, very costly. You will be anywhere, as I say, a pese, you be what I be. It's, you know, so the consequence of such an action, the kind of say, you will be alienated from the life of God. Another day, whether you are innocent or it is willful, you will still be alienated. Because as we sit right now, a quiet Yakopoma Yatia says, Unipa be Timmy Fasoban in chain, no be young on the fair free no. And then Yakopoma did do an ask. Beyond that, who be say, and I'm going to follow with the kind of one tears and part of me to me my answer. But what God has revealed to us, we know that say obi anti onyankopon asem, and also we who know onyankopon, and also we enjoy onyankopon asem na India. All of them they are in one category. They will be perished. You know, that form of ignorance on both ends, will still result in the same thing. You know, that alienation from God would proceed out of that ignorance. And untina, onyankopon hwehwe say, meni umi enu betimi de asempa no. E de ama enipa wo wiase nyina, as you saw meji edi ana so munji ndi no, enye wejuma. You have to let the knowledge be known. Manipa no hu no kre na so onte onyankopon asempa no. The person ode ye de, wo the knowledge na ko, opo no kre na so opo nim de na another consequence is in say one shed year what the whole brand no ada je nyina you waste it ube waste no. Matthew chapter 15 verse number 7. Matthew 15 verse number 7. Yentie asoma Jesus Christ to kai.
Matthew 15 no say nya twomfo edi say Isaiah share mo nkom say o man yi de wona no papa edi mini na wakoma de asia fi me hokọ echichi. Verse 9 na osori me kwa na wo cheche say ma edi pa ahyehe.
Good. Erunti Jesus Christ say saa osori na saa nipa de mani nyina na your sorry your friend say kwa if we say wo cheche encheche ye nipa ahyehe ni enti no say we are ignorant one hwe ni a enema wo di echi di asomo yakopon nyina at the end of the day God will tell you say you rendered a vain worship. Enti no wo wasede say wo say wo bre no wada age say wo de sumo yakopon no wunya bre hwehwe mu say enema ye gina so say ye de sumo yakopon no truly ye de yakopon asema kase ye gina so ye ana. You need to be able to question those things. And yes, I made a message of Christ in the over total njuma follows up or give now why is our routine now you don't question anything. You need to question or examine Sajidi now to be sure say in Nipan church be ambefin because once that thing pops up, Osuma the mo Yankopon now will be vain. I always say this. Obeko hela make sure say wow bonya we didn't now but some people will be a dad down. Now ube suffer the effects of that. It will be very painful. Ube call hell all right, but it's very painful. Very, very painful. So make sure you are not worshiping God misguided. Matthew 7:21. Interior Jesus Christ. As I can. Matthew 7, verse 21.
Enye obiara osebe se erade na obekọ soro ahedie. And the oye meja also apede.
Good. Enti enye obiara osi erade no benya osoro ahedie. The Jesus Christ person oche yina and say enne enkofo say omobre no mada age say wo sumo Nyankopon. But all those people no in the last day Jesus Christ be catch us say omumfiri no so nko omo ye enko a omo nse fata na so mo anye de etine. If we say being zealous okay. But God is more concerned, say, that zealousness, no. Wo yen wo nimdie mu anase no krem. It is say bia wutimi kwa sorry. Sundays wo ye ni mu nyina wutimi ko. Any sa nyama no. Commendable, but it is not enough. The most important thing is say the original so now this mo Yakopon. Are you sure? And are you convinced to say a idea truly a free Yakopon say more? And in Romans chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Osama for Paul shared, and you see, Paul was a converted Jew. Into no onim about the Judaism, and who are there this shemu esumono. Paul is aware. It's a Jew for the Bible says ojina na ne ra into no na no nkoto sre and empire of Emma Jew for the interior said he was one for Paul kind. Romans 10 verse 1 and 2.
And you know, I took on 1 year at the day, and then the Kotua, the Kotu Messia, with Yakupo, Mema one, I said, Ubina and one. Now, if you want to dance here, said, Yakupo, one day, and she will be in the
It's Paul say, for I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. And you know, you can obey me and go for whom body more pee, but some of the body say, need him more a waste. Opa, baby, I bet she go for visitation, but some of them body in general, Yankopon nuclear more. At the end of the day, we are so far. And Paul say, Nakuma swat the end and to throw Strepan is a Jew for the bit me yankwa. If it's a woman, Yakopon more than body, name of Munim. Now, as I say, one in the immunity, Yentia is. As I say, one need Sa and Wardena and I say, I hope I can't win him the Bible, say, verse 3. Yentia Bible, Nika. For they being ignorant of God's righteousness and seeking to establish their own righteousness have not submitted to the righteousness of God. Definitely, you won't be able to identify the righteousness of God. It is a woman said the righteousness of God are the only resolution in the say you are setting your own standards for righteousness. And once you set your own standard for righteousness, you miss the righteousness of God. It's an effect of a cause. Who ni mo Nyankopon ni media, who ti wo Nyankopon tene. Neso nse who ni mo Nyankopon tene ni nti no. Obe pese obe hihye bibia ejina mo ho a to you no represent say tene ye. And once you establish that, we free Nyankopon tene ye. So you cannot be saved. And nothing Paul every time no call you go to you anymore. Or say Jew for the because yes, Christ are Basempanaba. But Jew for the still they believe say sa apam dada ni emusum and no de yo Nyankopon tene ne ye. It was say what brand wada ade nyina. And Paul say it's not say yes ade ni tema wo hwe Onyankopon tene ne ye na oye. 2 Corinthians 5 verse number 21. 2 Corinthians 5:21.
If you say the what did you want or the name
for he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him. It's the Paul okay they say yes Christ abada so we be waji nipa nyina kwa sa tene ne ye no Nyankopon dey ahye and if you want to be found in the righteousness of God you have to be in him. And Jew for also and Jesus Christ only omonji Christ sum ni ndi and what say sa apam da enemy. So definitely there is no way they can be in the righteousness of God unless you go through this. So now go for righteousness, no, the question is Christ. You have to be in him. Into obedience, baptism, no here, and then so on. the point in the name yes baptism na hunya Bible say esu born na do ko Jesus Christ. You go in because you want to have access to the righteousness of God, period. If someone pay righteousness now and go boesu, one boesu so you can't have access to the righteousness of God. It's as simple as that. And don't you know, say unim dia, if you are ignorant, you have misguided zeal, and also it will be a waste of time. And it's a the last one, and it say you become vulnerable to deception. And you'll be able to be that. And that is the biggest problem currently we are facing in the world. And normal, so far, you know, most of us, you go school much there in your to say economic principles or much so far near the end. Have you ever sat and asked yourself, are they much and someone could fake no credit? There have been documentaries and professors about outside, like I say, they were giving money to push a certain models, be ideologies. So, don't allow, and today social media is very easy. Into no be on the phone now, or to share your opinion. One share here, one penny there. One share across social media, who free honor. Now, why you polluted? Because a lot of opinions. And this is the biggest virus we are seeing. Social media. Obiashi opinion. And it's a one shiny year. Obi okwe bi on the batifi. But on no year na dream no who say o training the ban. But the ban no phone. He or she has access to a lot of data on to be ground processing. Into no one himself to tell ban all right. We never hustle no. Now, Obana Dani Adiebi, what's now shall say, hey, it happens. And you know, you need to make sure, say, guard what you are allowed to enter here. You need to make those conscious decisions. There are some posts if you now okay. Not say just scroll. No, up. And then you be on a comment to us. You see, obi o comment to obi post as ni edidi na tem on social media no so sa enfa. So you need to be intentional about guarding what you are allowed to enter you. And go for be share opinions bebre. Ni na your opinion. So obi o ko school na mo ano. But o free school ni mo ba be bobra wa ye. O go share sani for shop ka just school esu ni mfa so. Obi so our co school. And they be our PhD this annual. Only say the onam kwa hu tonto we no just arabu mu no. And that person can also share their opinion. Those two opinions, you know. Into the yakopo ama adwen no. Also tia o de wa tena na wa access the bebo no fa. Na wa to also edeko. You need to guard what you are allowed to enter you. Mostly say nkofo bebre e2 they speak from their fears. You need to understand those things. Say ever they be able to go to car. Na so be person 2 for car na go to no ho immediately o sha say so twi car no. And you may be a bubo obonu hu ni nyina nko ano no bedi hu nkomo. It is one shey you want so as was to some suro bi abeto no so. But it is not your experience. So guard your mind and your heart. Guard it. The only way you can guard it is acquire knowledge. Oh dear. Say over say what dey nyina pe bibi wasase we so it should be for knowledge. Have knowledge. And then I found say uko school na unko school. Nim de wetime anya no baby bebree. Enti the hwehwe say o pesa nim de no. Wodwuma a wo ye we excel here. The difference between company A and company B is knowledge. It's you know what on idea. What's not see out in because my 5-10 years. Okay, in this coming year, then I make me a year there. Kopesa nim there na faka ho. And I bet me answer. Otherwise, the result of the past 10 years, in the next 50 years, so what you ask now you the same thing now, you get the same results. and your rocket science. We need to guard our minds and our hearts from the things we allow to enter us. Now, what is the cure for ignorance? Number one is admitted need. As I say, personally, what me do, baby, no, say, I did read the menu. So, who needs self-realization now? You cannot be on the quest for knowledge. Nti who say, I say, usually who used to kasa to say nyansa hene. When you say we are seeing bibia, such individuals, they don't have any zeal for the quest of knowledge because who say ade bi onim. And you have to be humble to be able to cure ignorance. You need to be humble. Ebi okra na nipa na ese so kwaje sa nim de ni fi no who ni say sa ko ekwa me mako school pa o. Emfa ho and go we go school at the end of the day we na school no kwa de ko sie sie ni na on kai. But obenya certificate it doesn't mean anything. Once you know say sa di pa we won knowledge na wo hwehwe no. If you choose not to be humble, now you're pride. Once you become prideful, you will fall. So humility is the key. You humble yourself and you go and look for the truth. And I say knowledge. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 12. Proverbs 26, verse 12.
Proverbs 26, verse 12. I say, Onipa oyena onipa oyenwa oyonwa na lisu jansapo and that's all ma Kwasi accident.
It is Solomon say, do you see a man wise in his own eyes? Onipa onwa na neni so hu ni so yansaani no. Solomon say, nipa onye okay no. Ono crowd ni that's all because nipa onye okay and ono so be jatum say I say ade a me ye die mkoyi eno no yoki obenya solution but the who is on no anka enya safo no and he was talking about pride ahomaso so wuni bibi na ko bi so obi na se sa ade na bebo na se sa life a unama obi antwere ngu wenim se oni Theophilus na ka ade we echi na media yi it is not written. Once you become humble wait me solve a lot of things. Life. Number two, the fear of the Lord, giving reverence to God. Usually, say, Obika assembly chona say, "Uti assembly no kan na." It is not simply because assembly no crane but you have a certain level of respect. Dia odi amasa ni paniti ma utie. Ne numa asema na say na asema all kan. Proverbs 1:7. Eba yehu say, nyansa ahyesie. Eye nyamesuru nti saa osuro ni se nyama onyankopon eboaye ema yetimi nya saa nimde na yehia no. The last one is asking for wisdom, which is prayer. You cannot learn your way through everything. If you have some bomb pie na nyankopon lead you to a particular person there or saa nimde na ohwehwe. If you look at how nyankopon design we as now. And if you look at your own life, there has been some moments in your life which phobia. What's not say with yourself? I can say, hey. Maybe I can say, I wish person can be share earlier. And I say, can be share So all those statements that we make, they are individuals and they have exactly what you are looking for. And once you meet them, and those things, some of them you have to orchestrate it through prayer. Say, Nyankopon ebe orchestrate your movement to a way you'll be able to cross paths with such individuals. Obi owa ne de nyina ahyase say okofa trotro ebia nipa no o ma ne kwan kakra ma ne and you exchange numbers so agene number mo didi nkomo and that person in some few years to come was exactly the kind of individual as so koshia na ema BBC. So all those things you can have access to them, and that is a way you can cure ignorance. In the empire account, you have to pray to God for wisdom. Now, about that ability say unya knowledge, act upon the knowledge, and it becomes wisdom for you. And yes, sir, we say your knowledge, all right. Even if you gain the knowledge, now we need to you still, and even say you become an educated fool. Who's that? So who study slavery at home? At some point in time, they allowed the slaves to go to school. But it was simply for them to become managers of the same plantation. We just elevate a few slaves above the rest. No more na side D. Some conformers within the same plantation. And one thing here, knowledge, here. If you gain knowledge and you don't have understanding, and you see, what Solomon says is true. So same sinners ought to wodia. Obiabu is your answer for. But when you be one, you say, now Fedian go for decided, hey, I say, what would in Saturday when you mean you see. And I say, hey, any opinions the same pound. It all depends on the understanding you have with the knowledge you've acquired. Yeah, the addition to BC, I say, Obi was